Hey friends, it's Ben from Evolving Man. This episode of the podcast is with Becky Griffin. She runs an ayahuasca plant medicine treatment center down in Peru, in the jungle outside Iquitos. She joins me to talk about ayahuasca shamanism, but also about something called the plant dieta, which doesn't have much to do with ayahuasca, actually. It's a relationship or a treatment that a person undergoes with one of these plants from the jungle. She tells some stories, talks about some of the benefits, and this is a lesser known conversation that is, let's call it less fantastical than the conversation around ayahuasca, which we do get into. And I think this was a really informative conversation for people who are interested in plant medicine. It's definitely an informative conversation for someone who's considering going to Peru for a deeper layer of treatment. We talk a lot about that and about the benefits of going all the way down there versus doing a plant medicine in your locale or in Costa Rica, where you can do that and have this sort of first class experience. We talk about the differences and the benefits of going all the way to the jungle. At the end of this episode, we actually talk about how if people are interested in going with me to the jungle, to Caya Shobo, to reach out. So you can comment below if you're interested in that. If you think we're crazy, you can comment below about that too. And please like, subscribe, share this with people who might benefit from it. And enjoy this episode with Becky Griffin. All right, everyone. I am sitting with a friend and mentor and teacher live in person, which is quite exciting because I do a lot of these on Zoom or Zencaster now online. So Becky Griffin is sitting with me, and it's good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Ben. Great to be here.
So today we are talking about plant medicine, the healing power of plant medicine. And you are a person who works with ayahuasca. What do you call yourself? I know there's curandera, vegetalista, shaman. What term would you use?
To myself, good question. I don't really have a term I apply to myself, but putting me on the spot here, I guess I'd say helper.
So humble.
Well, I mean, I feel to say curandera or shaman or apprentice all carry a story with them, and
Yeah, they're all charged terms.
yeah. So yeah, I guess teacher maybe.
Quick background on our relationship and what you're up to in the world. I encountered you almost 10 years ago, so I'd say 8 years ago, you and your partner Miguel in an ayahuasca ceremony, and had lots of things happen for me. Since then have continued to come back to your circles and check in with the medicine and with you a couple times a year, maybe 3 ceremonies per weekend, and a couple weekends per year, and have built this trusting relationship with you as a healer and have watched you grow in your relationship to ayahuasca and plant medicine, the dietas, and have also watched you build this ayahuasca center in Iquitos, in Peru, Caya Shobo. And I went down there to spend 3 weeks and do a dieta and sit with your workers down there and see what you've built, and it's great. It's beautiful. It's powerful.
Thank you. Big project.
Yeah, big project. And you guys have done a lot since I was there. And I think a lot of people are interested in ayahuasca. There's a lot of talk about ayahuasca right now in the world. There's ayahuasca is appearing in a lot of places that you wouldn't expect it, the middle of big cities in warehouses and groups of hundreds of people.
Wow.
And pretty much anybody who's like into inner work has a story now. And there's centers all over the place. And it's kind of the hot topic. And we can talk about ayahuasca, but I think the main focus today, as we've intended, is on the whole other world of plant medicine that isn't talked about as much, and the healing capacity of all those things that are a little bit less flashy, let's say. And I'm excited to dig into that with you. So perhaps the question I'll open with is, what has drawn you to this work? Why are you so passionate about it? Why have you made it your life's work?
Good question. Well, ayahuasca came into my life about 15 years ago. Actually, it was my father who shared with me his experience. At the time, I thought that he had kind of made a weird sidetrack. I thought it was surprising. And I said to him, I thought you gave up psychedelics in the 60s and 70s, Dad. Like, what's this? But actually, it was a few months after he shared with me about his experience that I had the opportunity to sit in a circle that was held by a person mainly working with the Shipibo medicine tradition. And that's the tradition that I've worked with since then. And I felt a sort of, a lot of people say this, I felt a kind of calling to experience it. I was super nervous, really scared. I'm not really sure why. I wasn't sure why then. I mean, I think I knew that this experience with ayahuasca would take the lid off things within me, things that I'd kind of been holding down for quite a while. And I didn't know what was going to be in there. So I had a couple of weeks to prepare myself, and then I attended this ceremony. And for me, it was a really powerful first experience. I think more than anything, it opened a remembering of the spiritual existence that I'd forgotten. I felt like I walked into a world that clearly held spirit. And I had all but forgotten all of that. I'd worked in the corporate world for 15 years and, magic and spirituality was just a kind of nonsense topic for me at that point. So that was a pretty big, there was a quality to it of remembering.
Right, like a coming home almost.
Yeah, rather than like something new. It's like my soul knew this, something there. But it was also very scary. I drank a lot of medicine, and it was pretty confronting. And I had that experience where you don't think you're coming back from it.
Yeah, right. The time sort of disappears. You feel like you've been there forever, and it's disorienting. And that thought crosses your mind, like, oh man, have I done it now? Have I gone too far to the point where I don't come back?
Yeah, that's right. That's what I felt. And then finally, when I did come back, I felt massive relief. I chatted to the curandera a couple of days later, and I asked him, well, like, what is this? Like, how do people engage with this? Is this something that people do regularly or once in a lifetime, or like, what is it? And he said to me, well, it depends, For some people, it's an immediate, clear calling. This is something for them. And for others, it's something that maybe they'll never return to. For some people, maybe it's once every 20 years. And for me, I said, well, that's me. I think I'll be back in 20 years, maybe.
Right. Yeah, because that makes sense, because your experience was so big, so powerful. And I think a lot of people will resonate with this if they've had a huge journey like this, where you come out the other side and you're like, okay, I think I'll be integrating that for the next couple decades. Like, I don't need to come back tomorrow for another dose.
Absolutely. Yeah. Integration was a big thing. It was I felt so woken up in so many ways. It's like poetry suddenly opened for me, and just a big, walking through the doorways of self-examination and self-discovery was pretty exciting. But I guess it was a couple of months later when I strongly felt in my body, actually, this kind of yanking back towards the ayahuasca experience, towards a ceremonial experience. And I didn't really understand why. I felt it was kind of my soul calling me back to it, and so I followed. And that started a kind of journey over the next 3 or 4 years of really confronting a lot of stuff within myself. In the beginning, those ceremonies were full of that, kind of sense of being filled up, with beauty, and again, remembering myself, and very important memories with my parents and other loved ones, and good and bad, kind of all of it. It was like a filling up.
Mm-hmm. Right. And your unconscious sort of empties itself, but somehow you feel closer to yourself via that opening.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so then from there, and I've seen this with many people since, actually, the medicine kind of seemed to shift gear and started really revealing to me a lot of darknesses, a lot of pain, sadness, anger, frustration that was living deeply within me and in vast quantities, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And there were many, many ceremonies that were, I would say, excruciatingly difficult to confront that stuff and little by little feel it being cleaned, not only with the medicine, but also with the songs. The icaros of the healers was very important. And even though it was challenging, I felt that each time I was a little bit lighter, a little bit clearer.
Mm-hmm. 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 So it sounds like this resonates because I've heard so many stories, and that you kind of get what you need at the time, that the medicine is interfacing with you, and so there's this interplay, and it takes you where you're ready for, maybe to your edge, and if you keep pressing forward, it takes you to a new edge once you've figured that first one out. And from what I've seen, a lot of people get a very manageable introduction, perhaps hard and overwhelming, but a lot of times there's this sort of like gentleness, even though it's like really intense. There tends to be
a lot of light.
And then if you sort of keep sending this message, you're like, hey, I'm serious about like going deeper here, it kind of responds at some point and is like, okay, well, here's like a whole other layer of
the real work.
That I'm going to reveal to you, and then your mind plays all its trickery as well around like, oh, is this my stuff? Like maybe I'm feeling like other people's stuff in the room here. Like I'm not that dark. Like this can't be mine. Right?
Yeah. Lots of interesting responses depending on our profile. The kind of personality we've built to deal with stresses and situations that can feel dangerous.
Yeah, right. And I guess I should just acknowledge that there's the denial, but then there's also the like, if you're someone who beats the crap out of themselves, you might go, oh, see, it's been revealed. I'm evil. I'm just a possessed, dark, bad person, right? And you can swim in that depression for a while when this stuff comes up. You're right. There's many ways that you can go with it, but either way, this stuff eventually gets revealed to a person, because I guess what you were saying to the medicine is like, hey, I want to go through all the levels of work, or as many as I can here. I'm serious about going deeper and deeper and deeper. So give me the hard stuff.
The hard stuff. It's remarkable. I think that's why many people feel called again and again to ayahuasca, is the wisdom that, and the majesty, I guess, the intelligence of this spirit plant. It's difficult to describe. It has to be experienced. And as you say, she meets you where you're at, what you need, what you're ready for. And it can shift. It can shift. And not only like start with light and shift to dark, but there can be many layers of the onion, so to speak. Well, for me, the first few years was pretty challenging. I had some pretty tough stuff to look at from my childhood that I had really not. I had just kind of stuffed it down and then gone ambitiously into my corporate career until I reached a kind of breaking point of unhappiness and dissatisfaction. And so, I took a break from that, and then ayahuasca turned up during that break, and this seemed fitting. It was what I was looking for. And I think another thing that was helpful, especially, was that I had gotten some therapeutic help, psychotherapy, to help me understand why I had these various behaviors that were self-destructive, or that I wasn't really feeling fulfilled with my work, although I had a great career and everything was kind of laid out for me. And they had been helpful, but they weren't experienced in the body, you know?
Right.
Like ayahuasca, that was the thing I think I first found so astounding, was that the healing was deep. It was physical as well as fully emotional, and the mind being stretched to some very unexpected places.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, this sense of being held in the palm of a caring, although sometimes severe spirit, reminding you of your own spirit's existence. It was all of it, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but very much in the body, which I had missed.
Yeah, I think this is a really important point for people to hear about this kind of work, because psychotherapy, talk therapy is the mainstay for North American people right now when they need to do their work. And a lot of that is top down CBT style, like, hey, work with the thoughts and then you can change the mind. But what that model doesn't acknowledge is that there's a nervous system, and that there might be layers beyond even your nervous system, like your spiritual energy system and your emotions living in your gut that perhaps can't be influenced by working on the mind. There's, people argue, whether it's the mind or the emotions that sort of come first, but I don't want to get into that. What I was thinking about this morning was something that I saw when I was like 21, and I was reading a book called No Boundary by Ken Wilber. And in there, he describes this spectrum of consciousness and how there's sort of these layers to it. And that, within the mind, you have splits. You have the persona and the shadow. And then a layer below that, you have the entire mind. And then below that, you have the body, the mind-body connection. And beyond that, you have the spirit, and there's different forms of therapy that work on those different layers, right? Jungian psychology works on the shadow and the persona. Transpersonal psychology aims to work on the sort of the beyond the ego self, right? The transpersonal. And there's the theory of plant medicine and shamanism is that you can work from the spirit up to the body and to the mind. And that working from the mind down is really difficult. Like Joe Dispenza is doing some of that work, right? Where you're like, he's helping people create massive transformations with like meditation in their bodies. But it's taken a long time for that kind of power to come about. And, really until he came along, it really wasn't popularized. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that we need to work at the different layers, and just going to therapy, doing CBT and working with your mind is a one trick pony. And there are other layers to a person that sometimes we don't even want to acknowledge exist. And plant medicine works at those deeper layers and can benefit you all the way up.
It's interesting. I don't know a great deal about the different types of therapy for the mind that you're talking about. I know a little bit, but it's curious now, 15 years into working with this path. I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit because there's the whole chapter about dieta, which is a whole another level of understanding of working with plant medicine. But on this topic of where we target treatment to help a person be well, in the jungle, I think at this point in my journey with the plants, what I can see most clearly is that native people living in the jungle live in a fully embodied and mentally active and emotionally available, spiritually kind of engaged way in relationship with their physical environment. You know, they're immersed in the energy of the plants, the heat, the water, the earth, one another, themselves. And in our culture, you know, of course, we've separated all the physical elements of nature into their respective parts, and we you know, create things from that, and we compartmentalize everything.
Everything's
right?
compartmentalized.
Right.
Yeah.
For the native person, that is a kind of bizarre thing. I actually see some of the master healers listening to the Westerners describe, well, this part of me is like this and this part of me is like that. And they've learned to kind of understand and work with that. But for them, it's all highly interconnected. You know, so where any one of those aspects of the person is out of balance, that is going to affect all of the other aspects. And definitely where there's physical illness or physical suffering, that is always where the healer in the jungle will start with their priority, is to address the physical. Because typically the roots of that are tied to the emotional or psychological or spiritual imbalance.
So, yeah, how do they address the physical? You know, someone comes to the jungle and is dealing with Crohn's disease. How do they address that?
Well, so this is a good kind of segue into talking about dieta. So ayahuasca, for the Shipibo people, has a few important benefits. In its sort of physical benefit, it helps to cleanse the digestive system and purify the blood. It's actually kind of a good blood thinner. In its spiritual benefit, it allows access to the spiritual world. And I mean, for Westerners, that in itself can be hugely healing.
And is like hard to even understand. But
whereas for the Shipibo person, that's, I mean, not all people in the tribe will drink ayahuasca. It's usually the shamans who work with ayahuasca. You know, it can be intimidating for the average tribal person as well to kind of walk through those doorways or that portal into the spiritual realm. But it can be very healing for Westerners, where we've lived so disconnected from nature and from the spirit of nature, our sense of godliness, if you like. But also the benefit of ayahuasca, and probably the principal reason that it's used practitionally to administer healing, is for diagnostic purposes, to be able to see what is going on in a person's body, in their mental state, in their heart space, and where's the spirit in relationship to these things. And also to be able to see how they are in relationship to their own plants. So a genuine master healer in the Shipibo culture is not only drinking ayahuasca year after year and kind of learning through those experiences. That is more like a doorway for them to be able to commune with other teacher plant spirits, master plants that have been identified over thousands of years for having different both physical healing properties and also a kind of wisdom, knowledge offerings, energetic teachings. And so the master healer, or Onányas is how the Shipibo call their master healers, they will develop their skills and gain the specific doctoring knowledge on how to help other people through what they call dieting those plants. The diet with the plants involves certain dietary restrictions and kind of lifestyle restrictions and things like that. And that is where really most of the kind of knowledge development and expansion and kind of transformation of the shamanic doctor occurs, is in that dietary process. It's also how they learn which plants to prescribe for a person who's dealing with different physical issues or different emotional difficulties, you know, maybe the loss of a loved one or mental confusion, stresses, and so on. There are different plants that have different qualities, And through the ayahuasca ceremony, the shaman will see what is the best treatment for that person, and then initiate a dieta for them.
So the dieta, for people who haven't heard this term yet, let's just make sure it's really clear. A dieta is when you cleanse what I call all of the loud foods and substances out of your system over a fairly long period of time. It's not just a few days. It's a while. It's a few weeks, a few months, and maybe even a year or two if you're really trying to like master that relationship with that plant. You cleanse all of the things out of your system: salt, garlic, loud spices, caffeine, chocolate, sugar,
Dairy, red meat,
acidic
foods.
Yeah, so salad is very boring. Your meals are very boring at the beginning. You cleanse all the stuff out, and you take, in some way, you ingest this plant that is that is known to have a strong spirit that is like has teachings and a healing power within it. And you spend time with that thing being the only, let's say, like thing with a voice in your system, and slowly it opens to working with you as you sort of court it. It's almost like this courtship with a spirit. This is my like layman.
It's a beautiful way of describing it, actually.
Novice way of describing it. Yeah. And some plants have more like things to teach you and to challenge you with in your psyche. And some are, perhaps have more capacity to do things in the body and to heal things in the body. But the idea is that these things are basically like people, but in
non-human people.
In non-human people. And so there's a personality, and there's like sides to each of these things. And they're not even necessarily benevolent. There's like light sides and dark sides to these spirits. And the further you go, the more you have to confront those things, and those things might come up and in and through you, which becomes your challenge to face. It's all learning and growth, and so that engaging that relationship is it's like taking on a teacher that you can't fully see, that's like behind some kind of a curtain. And slowly the curtain is revealed, and the teacher like passes you challenges from around behind the curtain or under, or like writes you a note in the night, because like stuff comes through in the dreams with these plant medicines. People have like common dreams on when they're out dieting certain plants. It's like there's these like patterns. Like the plant that I was dieting in the jungle was called Pino Blanco, and I was having all these dreams of cops, like police officers, like just showing up, and then like me trying to deal with the police, and a lot of zoomed out, like Google Earth type flying over landscapes. And I just have these recurring experiences. And when I would share those with people, I shared those with you. There was not really a surprise, because like this is very common for that particular plant. And so I suppose there's interpretation for each of those dreams, but that is kind of my interpretation of how dieta works. And and so just to finish it up, if I was to want to master these things and become a curandero, I would dieta for months and years, specific plants over time, and I would build a relationship and an understanding of what those plant medicines do and what they are, and their light and their dark sides, and learn how to work with those energies, and then I would know from a felt sense whether somebody needs that or not.
Yes, absolutely. That's a good way of describing it. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think it's more complex than that. It is difficult to really put language to it fully, but it is like that felt sense. You know, the master healer will have their own personal knowledge and memories of working with different plants, and unlike a herbalist which is also a field of medicinal work within the Shipibo culture, that they're called the Raumi, the herbalists, who are looking specifically at physical properties of plants and matching them to sort of physical challenges or symptoms of certain conditions.
Can you give me an example of that?
So malva is a plant which is good if a person has a sore throat, or to aid with bringing on birthing of a new baby, things like that. Or there's so many. I mean, there's dozens and dozens. Basically, the way we would eat garlic, you know, to help build up our immune system. And lots of plants, that's kind of the limit of their benefit, is more in the herbal realm.
But you were linking the physical properties of the plant to the thing that needs to be addressed in the person.
Oh, okay. Well, so there's a really good example of that, although, you know, yeah, I see where you're going. Ergon sacha is a good example of that. That is a plant which looks just like the skin of a particular venomous snake in the jungle. And it has a root which is like a big potato. And that particular root is the best natural medicine to suck out that venom of that same snake from the body, which is a curious thing.
It is a curious thing. That kind of stuff is all over nature, and it's you could say it's a sign of intelligent design, right? And this relationship between humans with eyes who can see patterns and the way that nature presents itself to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so then there are other plants which, as I mentioned earlier, have been kind of identified as the master plants, the master dieting plants. And most of them do have physical beneficial properties as well. But through dieting them themselves, the healers come to understand so much more than just the physical benefits of the plant. As you said, it's a relationship. And you know, it's kind of, when the diet is opened, it's like a seed of the consciousness of the plant, if you like, is planted inside a person's field. And then through following the discipline of the diet, which the Shipibo people have learned over a couple of thousand, who knows how long, but at least a couple of thousand years, they've identified which things make the plants happy and which things don't make them happy in terms of what we eat and what we do. And then from there, creating a comfortable world, like the sort of world you would need to create for a new little seedling. You know, you don't want to shake it too much. You don't want to give it too much water, not too much sun, not too much wind. Yeah, from there, you're kind of looking after this little seedling within you, and it starts to grow, and starts to talk to you in your dreams. And these particular master teacher plants have been found by the Shipibo as being really grand spirits, you know, grand teachers who test your character, who help treat your physical problems, who help clean emotional baggage or kind of blocks, contortions, grief and frustration or resentment, things like that, who can help clarify the mind or elevate the mind, kind of open new understandings about the spiritual consciousness, and bring the spirit back into the body. And well, for the Shipibo, health is a reflection of balance and harmony. Nature is complex and rich, but when it's healthy, it harmonizes. Everything kind of balances out. So it's not only the knowledge of their personal experience dieting the plants, or what they've learned from their parents or their grandparents, who probably also were shamanic medicos working with the plants. It's also in that ayahuasca space, in the ceremony, where the maestro might simply be told clearly, this is the correct plant for that person. You know, it's sometimes a knowing and a clarity that's beyond description, beyond technical description. It's just that is the correct treatment for that particular problem that they're seeing.
Right. So, perhaps you could say that a great curandero has this sort of connection that is almost not telepathic, but ultimately wise and sort of connected to the great knowing, that they're able to like allow that to flow through them.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big part of, I guess, more advanced apprenticeship is being able to access this, what I call it, alpha state. It's,
Right.
I don't hear them calling it that, but it's like a state in between being active in your mind and being asleep. You know, you're kind of in this connected space where, particularly when you have diets, you know, big diets especially, those plant spirits talk to you, they present information to you, and it can be as clear as words, or it can be visual depictions, or utilizing your own memories, and they're often very symbolic, the plants. So there's a kind of learning how to interpret it too.
I get what you're saying, because I've had many ceremonies for a normal person. I've done a lot of ceremonies at this point, and I've had what a funny
What's a
term,
normal
normal person. A Joe Schmo. And I've had many experiences where it's interesting in these ceremonies when the medicine's like in, and I'm not freaking out and rustling around, and I can really get quiet with it, like really, really quiet with my breath. That's when the spirit world kind of gets louder and comes up. And I have friends who like, they have these amazing visualizations and they're seeing dragons, and my friend Alex got sucked out of the room into a giant blob, and I don't have that kind of stuff happen, but in those moments where I've gotten really quiet and really sort of tuned in to like try to see what's happening, a lot of times I just sort of can feel and see these very thin, hard to see, like veiled things around me, and I feel like I'm in a conversation. I feel like I'm in a room where there's languages being spoken that I can't understand. Similar to what you're talking about here, where like I feel like I'm kind of like in the presence of something, somebody, some people, but I don't know how to interact with them. I don't know what I'm hearing or perceiving. And in fact, as soon as my mind goes, what is that?
It's gone. It's
Boom,
gone.
it's gone. So it's like, it's such a weird space. It's like you're awake and you're dreaming. And as soon as you go like, am I dreaming? Or like, as soon as you try to direct it in any way, this is for me, if I try to exert any kind of observation or logic or any kind of steering or control, poof, it's gone.
Yeah, suddenly the mind is ruling again.
Yeah. Like mind starts switching on, bam, it's gone. The cloud is blown away. So I can kind of get what you're saying, where like if a person has spent thousands of hours in that space and slowly built a relationship and the language and their own way of booting up that program that you're talking about, then I can see how this would work. You know, I like how you described ayahuasca as this diagnostic tool. To me, it seems like the like you've booted up the game, the computer game, and like you're in the space now with the player, and then
what?
as
Where
the
do you
practitioner,
go?
it's on you to like slowly gather your tools and learn how to like navigate the world and see the stuff. And it's interesting to hear you say this, because I think most people watching or listening to this who have had a psychedelic experience at all, or an experience with ayahuasca, there's your experience, you know, there's your experiences that you had. And then there's the whole other side of things that the practitioner has.
Mm-hmm.
And
everyone's curious. What did they see?
It's a very different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah, perhaps what I would love is to hear about one or two of these plants that you're particularly fond of, and just to give like a more tangible example of what these things do and what people might come to learn or to heal with plant medicines. You know, like, why would a person who's not trying to be a curandero, let's say, fly all the way to Peru? Yeah, okay, here's the clear question. Why would I fly to Peru to do one of these plant dietas in the jungle? It's a long number of flights, and the jungle isn't comfortable, and it can be dangerous. Why would I do that when I can just get some ayahuasca from some guy and drink it in my house? Or somebody told me they hold ceremonies, and I can just go there.
Good question. Well, you know, as we were discussing earlier, ayahuasca can help in lots of ways, but we say that it doesn't really facilitate transformation. You know, a lot of people come to Caya Shobo with spiritual curiosity. You know, what is this? What is this world? But I would say most come looking for help in some way. Maybe it's help with a physical problem or illness, or maybe it's more commonly help with emotional wellness and psychological wellness. And to be well often requires change, significant change. You know, sometimes there's short-term problems that can be treated with a kind of short-term treatment, but in our culture, we're so, I think we've become so disconnected in so many ways from our own self-understanding, from nature, from one another, you know, and it just seems to be getting worse in that way.
It does, yeah.
I mean, we have beautiful nature around us as well, but our culture is so strong in the mind, you know, and it kind of reinforces this kind of compartmentalizing and this sense of aloneness and separation. In order to actually create significant change, in order to restore balance deeply in the body, in the spirit of the body, in the heart, in the mind, and the kind of greater spirit, if you like, these diet plants can help you make that shift. It's not rapid, it's slow, it's incremental. In the same way that plants grow, it happens slowly. But in the jungle, the plants there, the knowledge of how to work with them, those particular master teachers, it's all there, you know, it's in its home environment. And yeah, it can be uncomfortable and hot and kind of challenging, especially if you're also drinking ayahuasca, which can purge your system and make you vomit and poop and be pretty uncomfortable, and other purgatives too. Yeah, it can be a little bit daunting. But on the other side of that, there's this potential, you know, to have those blocks and separation penetrated with natural energy and with natural wisdom to a very significant deep level, and to initiate a journey to restore harmony within the self in a way which I don't think is available up here. And ayahuasca is never really going to achieve that if you just keep drinking it, you know. Okay, yeah, you can access these altered states of consciousness and it will change, but that's not going to actually shift these deeply rooted patterns of thinking and behaving and way of relating that you've built up as you've built up your identity, your construct, you know. And there's things that need to be cleaned, and there's things that need to be kind of shifted, and that's where the diets help us. They don't do the change for you. But like if you look at a plant, look at a leaf in its like perfect harmonious formation of its skeleton, it's got this kind of sacred order. And when you're dieting a plant, that energy of its sacred order is like coming into your field and encountering these blocks and contortions and areas of grief and suffering that you hold inside. And that ordered energy encountering that kind of disordered energy, it kind of chokes and starts to enter and starts to penetrate and starts to clean and unravel. And with the help of the songs of the maestros, which carry all of the energy of their own diets kind of in an embodied way being transferred to you to clear those things, you can start to actually walk on that road of recovery, but real recovery, like deep cellular recovery in a lasting way that's not going to be lost, you know?
And the journey is not smooth and pretty and easy. It's challenging, bumpy. Just the few dietas that I've done, both with the same plant, have brought up some of my uglier sides. And there was definitely a few conversations with my partner where she was like, I don't want to be around you when you're dieting. This is hard for me. You're a dick. You're a dick when you're dieting. This is the light and the dark, folks, because like there was that happening, and I was like emotional and more intolerant, and at the same time, what I felt like growing in me was this like king energy, this sort of like noble. Especially when I was sitting with Miguel in ceremony and he was singing to me, and I believe we were dieting the same plant at the time, and I just felt like Christ energy just like coming into me. And then there was the delusion of like, am I God for a moment? You know? And then realizing like that was just like an essential energy that was in the space, and I was encountering it. And then afterwards, shutting down the diet and like being around people, and 3 people in the same week saying to me just randomly, like, you're really light. Like there's a lot of light that comes from you right now. That's like how I'm experiencing you. And being like, wow, there is a shift in how people are experiencing me.
It's like a reconfiguration happens. Yeah, for sure. It can be a bit gnarly. It can be ugly because all this stuff in you is being unearthed, you know, and yeah, others can experience you in a pretty uncomfortable way. That's why we recommend isolation when you're in diet. You know, the native shaman will do his diets totally in isolation in the jungle, or her diets. But there's that remarkable aspect of wisdom within the world of the plants, that nobility that you talked about, this kingliness or queenliness, this divine kind of righteousness, I guess, full of love, you know, not in that sort of ego-bound way, but like a genuine spiritual understanding of what are we doing here? You know, that lives inside the plants. That's pretty compelling. You asked me, you know, why I've continued with this. Well, the possibilities for genuine healing, alleviation of suffering, transformation of the person, how they feel, how they relate, and the choices they make, as well as this remarkable beauty, this remarkable knowledge, sacred knowledge, lives inside the plants.
And the healing and the transformation happening at the deepest level, right? That's a particularly important point in this context, because you know the pharmaceutical industry has taken over the world. And so we have pharma treating symptoms, and we have talk therapy treating the mind. But this world is deep work. If I'm a fan of anything, I'm a fan of deep work. I'm a fan of work that gets to the root of things and that goes under the surface, and
likewise
that perhaps also has like infinite layers to dig through. because then, it's infinitely exciting and you're never done.
Right.
But this is it, it's like endless transformation. And so, but the question comes, like, what are people committing to if they do this? Like, to get the benefits that you're describing, does a person need to set aside 2-3 years of their life and go live in the jungle? Or like, what can you do in 10 days? What can you do in 14 days at a retreat?
Yeah. Well, some people really do feel strongly drawn to keep dieting, but that's not necessary for everybody. That's something that called me and has continued to call me. But a couple of weeks in the jungle is a pretty potent experience. As you said, the jungle is intense. And that experience of dieting with the master plants, with the maestros there, it's going to have lasting benefit, Usually, I would say it's good to do that at least a few times, not necessarily in the jungle, but to have like a short periods of interrelation with the plants a few times before you can kind of make a long-term decision about whether there's something that you really want to make central to your life. Yeah. It's difficult, because I'm on this side of it. I'm like, well, I can see how it can benefit almost everybody.
Yeah, I'm here just constantly on this podcast telling everybody, every man in the world, that he needs to be in a men's group forever. Like guys,
yeah, just do it.
Everybody needs to be in a men's group. So I get what you mean. It's like once you're fully in something, it's like, well,
it's obvious too.
I don't see.
I guess I see it as our birthright, to be in deep communion with nature.
Yeah.
It's not like a new idea.
Yeah.
So there's so much, exploration of entheogens and psychedelic states, and I don't know, that seems a little dangerous to me, a lot of it, but I'm sure there's lots of benefit to it. I think what is hard to argue is that nature is not good for us. Like nature is definitely something that we could all do with, communing with more deeply. So learning about that and how to do it well, because in the knowledge of the Shipibo tradition, it's clear that it's not as simple as just wanting to. There's specific behaviors that will help you in that process or that will hinder you and can actually make things worse for you. Like just taking various strong plants willy-nilly is not necessarily going to be beneficial for you. Perhaps there'll be a short-term benefit of feeling like connected in some way and having things opened, but what about having those things cleaned and making sure that the plants are happy? If plants are people, they can be unhappy and as well,
Yeah, so you bring to mind this piece that I wanted to touch on, which is like why use a guide? Why go sit in ceremony? What are the benefits of having a guide and the pitfalls of not having one?
Well, as you described earlier, the plants are like have sides, just like we do. We have our good side, we have our bad side. We have our more kind of like analytical side, our more emotional side, spiritual or more in the material realm. And these different aspects in a non-human way exist within plants. And just like if we're in an environment which is not nurturing for us or safe for us, our various parts will start to, be unhappy and be unwell. So when you relate with a powerful plant and you're not really aware of how that plant can be unhappy with that relationship, it can harm you, It can definitely create clouds in the mind. And I've seen that a lot. I've seen in the short term, working with different plants like mushrooms or whatever, it can be fine, like to kind of have a sense of connectedness. But over time, without knowing what that plant needs, in the care of the relationship with the plant, the dark side of the plant starts to rule.
Mm-hmm.
It starts to affect the mind, it starts to affect the body, and you see people kind of with clouds of energy. They can't think clearly, or they start to become a bit split. And the more powerful the plant, the more dangerous it is. Ayahuasca is not a joke, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a pretty powerful dark side. And to know how to tame that dark side and create a safe space where healing can happen requires really a lot of knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah, one of the interesting pieces around in the many discussions I've had with you about the light and the dark side of plants is this idea of false light. And how a person may be shown all positive things and have a whole fully positive experience with a plant medicine or with ayahuasca, and not know necessarily that they're being led in a certain direction. And so there are victims of that. And there are victims of what's called brujos in the jungle, people who use ayahuasca and the power and the tools that they have for nefarious means, for harm of others. Mm-hmm. And there are guides who people can go to that will actually cause problems for the person on purpose, so that they can tell them that they have to come back, mm-hmm. right? So there's like this sneaky... scammy,
seedy side of it.
Energy,
mm-hmm.
yeah,
mm-hmm.
that can come through people and in the plant spirits.
Mm-hmm.
And people need to know that like, because I think people think shamans are just like meant to be like the Dalai Lama, like pure. I shouldn't even mention the Dalai Lama right now, because there's a controversial situation with him where he stuck his tongue out and a little girl sucked on his tongue.
Oh,
and everybody's like, the Dalai Lama's fucked up.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So, but there's this...
treating them as gurus.
Yeah, people think that shamans are like pure and good and whatever, and then you read a story about some bad stuff that happened, and people are like, see? Like, this isn't all love and light, and it's not all love and light. That's the point. Like, I think that's what I'm trying to say here, is that the plant spirit world and the humans that interface with it are plenty flawed, and are humans flawed or have their dark side, and the plant spirits have their own light and dark side that needs to be navigated, just like the light and dark side of your own mind and of your own romantic partner that you're in relationship with. Mm-hmm. And we need to go into that knowing that, and to not be naive, and to not just like go into these things willy-nilly and just, oh, that person has ayahuasca. I heard, like, I read some good reviews on Yelp, so I'm going to go to this, really like feeling into the trustability of the referral, and the person that you're hearing in their words, or however you're like finding your way to them. And this is why I've essentially only sat with you or Miguel or both of you, because I just don't want to, it's not worth it to make the mistake. I'm at the point now where I can sort of hold my medicine and go adventure outward a little bit, but I'm really still cautious about that. Because I don't want to make those mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like you as well. I discovered the Shipibo tradition, and I've had sprinklings of experiences with Quechua and Mestizo medicine, also working with ayahuasca as well. But I feel that when we're dealing with anything powerful as this, it makes sense to learn from those who have access to the oldest knowledge. And even there, to be careful, because people are people, and absolutely agree with you. It's not that anyone who has shamanic knowledge, even some of the highest maestros, who's necessarily a good person. Yeah, I kind of don't want to talk too much about the dark side of it, but the human race has a long history of doing weird things with energy in order to either benefit themselves or harm other people. And that hasn't gone away. And of course, when we're seeking healing, or when we're seeking a greater understanding of spirituality, or maybe we want to be a shaman, or we want to be a healer, we have ideas from our own culture, from our own indoctrination, and our culture is so full of these kind of shiny role models, there's like ideas on pedestals without, I don't know, I think it's really good to be grounded and to be careful. And I've seen places named as like evolutionary shamanism, which for me is a little interesting. It's like, okay, that makes sense. Shamanism is evolving, of course, but it makes more sense to me if it's grounded on a really thorough understanding of where we came from with shamanism. Yeah. And that's just basic cautious sense in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, this critique of teachers, shamans, and masters, sometimes I feel is the way it shows up is that like people weren't expecting the person to have flaws. You know what I mean? And so what I'm trying to say is like we all need to acknowledge that every teacher, you stop putting people on pedestals and engage in a way that is responsible and with our eyes open. And, I respect you. I like you. You've done a lot of work in this world. You know way more than I do in this world. And when you say stuff to me and you give me feedback, I let it land, but I don't take it as gospel. And I take it with a grain of salt, and I simmer in it and feel into it. And I think that's important for anybody.
Totally. Yeah. We have to be responsible for our own journey. As soon as we put that responsibility onto somebody else, and there's such a strong tendency to do that. A lot of the time we're looking for mommy, we're looking for daddy, the healthy version of them that maybe we didn't get. Yeah. And that's flawed. That's like destined for failure, because that person can't be the perfect mommy or daddy. They've got their own journey. No matter how much they've learned about healing, I think we need to treat them like brothers and sisters, actually. And yes, take responsibility for our own path and recognize that every single person's path is unique. We all have our own specific memories and experiences, our own way of interpreting those and kind of integrating them. And that means our journey to understand ourselves and to heal and transform ourselves is going to be unique. So I can share with you from my perspective. And I think that's something at Caya Shobo we try to be really clear about. We don't want hierarchies of power and knowledge there. It's like we are friends. It's a community of friends. We can share our own experience and what we've observed with others, and we can be clear that that's what that is. It's an offering, Sure, there's lots of commonality and there's some clues there that we can all kind of learn from, but we've each got to be the ones to take the steps in our lives.
Yeah, that's that's the best way to be. I feel like if in any place, in any healing journey, any place you go to for healing, if you give all your power over completely, if you give yourself completely to another person and you're in a pattern of doing that wherever you go, eventually you're going to be exploited and you're going to regret making that decision.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that will have its own powerful learning for you. You kind of come crashing down from that and you learn from there. Yeah. I do believe in that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I feel that I've seen in the jungle, but also in life, the jungle of life, if you like, that, the perfect poison is attracted to its perfect match of sickness. Right. Like challenges can be medicine. They kind of are. I think life's challenges and physical challenges and relational challenges. Yep. We seem to go to manifest what we need to grow, and that's not to say that we shouldn't hold other people accountable for how they behave and how they affect us, and yet we shouldn't abdicate our own accountability.
Yeah. On a personal level, asking yourself, like, why is this happening in my life right now? How did I call this in?
How did he call it in? Yeah.
How was I asking for this in some cosmic way so that I could resolve it somehow?
Yeah, there's also beautiful questions in there. And I do feel that the best healers from our culture are those that continue to focus on their own healing. You know, like, there's no better way really to help other people than to keep helping yourself.
Anybody that says, I've done my work, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, you just went down 3 points. You know, I may never trust you if you're saying that to me, you know, because like, what does that mean? Like, you're done? Yeah. I don't get that.
Yeah, it's funny. You know? Sometimes I hear people saying, "Oh, I don't want to drink ayahuasca anymore. She just shows me the same thing."
Yeah. Okay.
I wonder why.
You know, there's something there.
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, I went on the website for a ayahuasca center in Costa Rica the other day and just checked it out. 7-day experience, 4 ceremonies, first class accommodations, 1 dance experience, 1 massage experience, like, and then it was like, I don't know how many thousand, 8,000 souls healed.
Wow.
On the website.
That's interesting.
And I was thinking, you know, what would the difference in the experience be, you know, going down to there versus going almost twice as far, right? Into Peru, right? And what I'm getting from this conversation and what I know, because I've been to Peru, is that there's this depth in the depths of the jungle that of facing your fear, facing your discomfort. I think that isn't going to necessarily happen in that sort of first class environment. Caya Shobo is really great. And when I was there for a week, I spent 1 week in a tombo, is what it's called. It's like a little hut with a mosquito net that isn't perfect, in the middle of the jungle. And like, you know, getting out of the tombo at night, when I'm kind of like inebriated just from my plant diet, because the dreams are so wild, walking out of my tombo to pee in the middle of the night, fearing that maybe I'll get bit by a tarantula or a poisonous frog or just eaten by a jaguar. And having to like walk between the tombo and the maloka, which is the hut where they do the ceremony. All the fear that comes up and you know, blowing the candle out at night and hearing how loud the jungle is and all the weird sounds, and never mind all the visionary stuff that's coming through in the dreams. There's a very potent medicine in that fear and having to sort of face that stuff.
Yeah, you reminded me of the first few times that I went to the jungle. I was terrified too. It's hard to remember. I don't think about it much because now for me it's just beautiful. I don't feel that fear. I hear the songs of the frogs and the birds and the insects, constant symphony of beauty. And I don't know. I mean, I'm experienced now. I know the snakes aren't going to come chasing me, and there aren't jaguar in that area. But
now you tell me.
Yeah, we keep you in the dark there. Just see how you deal with it. Yeah, we used to run 5-day retreats. Well, we can't really call it a retreat. We call it a 5-day experience as well.
Retreat is not a good word, actually.
Yeah, and then we stopped doing that because it was so frustrating for us. You know, when you diet for on and off over these long periods of time, and you get this deepening, increasingly beautiful relationship with these plant spirits, and their energy grows in you like it's this kind of green mushrooming energy that's in you and gives you these kind of superpowers of vision and, yes, sometimes kind of telepathy. It's very compelling, you know, and you want to go deeper and further. And then people come along and they want to have the ayahuasca experience. If they don't get it the first night, they start saying, well, I didn't feel it. I want to have it. I want to get that experience. And so then we're trying to get them that experience on the second night or the third night. Yeah. or maybe they get it and it's too much and they're like, oh my God, I want to run away from here right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty frustrating work for us. We decided that's not actually what we're here to do. We're here to help people who really want to know themselves, and ayahuasca is a means to that journey, rather than to see things, to see, you know, angels and fairies and things, although that might happen. But our passion, because we've experienced ourselves the benefit of it, is to offer to other people the depth and potency of that experience. Because after you've had that, you know, terrifying kind of exposure to everything in the jungle, and you've been purged and cleansed by the plants and the songs and the ceremonies, you go home feeling pretty damn fantastic, right?
Yeah.
I think it's pretty incredible, the shininess that you can feel inside of yourself through and through, and in every part of your life.
Yeah.
That's exciting work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often feel like I've gone to school, like at the deepest school, you know, and the school of me, in a way, like it just sort of understanding myself and like figuring out the pieces and getting rid of things that don't work, and I'm sure that there, on some level, I know that that's happening when I'm totally blasted and don't know who I am, that there's like an energetic thing happening there, communion between my spirit and other spirits, and the Shipibo, the curanderos in the room, and the Icaros, etc. But there's also this liminal space that I almost enjoy more, where my mind is active and I can see it and I can work with it, and I can go like, oh, like I'm noticing this tension in my body, like what's that about? And then a memory will come to me, and I'll feel that memory, and I'll feel my body change, and then I can like kind of go in there and work.
Yeah, that's
on
what
myself.
we're aiming for. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the space we want to create. I mean, sometimes you do have really powerful nights with ayahuasca, and there's always some kind of benefit to that, at least when it's in a safe container and the energies are being cleaned. But our like kind of best aim is to help each person find the right dosing, so that while they're dieting and they're entering into the ceremony space, they can have those conversations with their diet plants and with themselves and with these other spirit helpers that turn up. You know, when you're in the space, but you're not totally overwhelmed by just wild visions kind of, you know, attacking you kind of, so to speak.
Yeah. Like there's, I had an experience in one of the last ceremonies where I was with you folks about 9 months ago, where I've been reconnecting with my brother in recent years, and I have a good amount of wounding to work through with my brother, and have been doing that. And I actually, in the many ceremonies before this one, I had virtually never encountered him in my vision, in my mind. I just never really touched that side of things, and he sort of came up and came towards me, and I felt my nervous system go just like it turned all prickly like a cat. And I've never had such a like vivid sense of my nervous system being separate from like other parts of me, from my mind perhaps, and like that it's this unique thing in my body. It's not my whole body. It's a part of it, and it runs through the whole thing. And it has imprints. And I know a little bit about somatic therapy. I haven't done a lot of somatic therapy with a practitioner, but in that moment, I had a capacity to like see that and like breathe my own safety into the prickliness with him standing in front of me, and then like actually have him move away from me and then move back closer again, and sort of feel that reaction and sort of work on relaxing in that, and
Learning.
It's stepping out of like, there's no need for me to have that reaction anymore. It's kind of like an allergy. Like it's a program in your body, and from a particular time. And so learning how to work with that agitation and calm it and bring the king to it, bring the like safe holding energy to that, it had a great impact on my relationship with him as I'm rebuilding it. And it's just an example of this sort of like tangible, deep level work that a person can do when you're in the right space, and you're available enough to it, and the medicine sort of meets you in the right space. That is sort of this. It's magical. It's powerful. It's the most powerful opportunity.
Yeah, and I think that's the way we're meant to live. In that connected, mindful, alive way, where we're not like kind of denying different parts of ourselves, or in weird relationships of compromise with different parts of ourselves. Actually, I see a lot of the healing work that happens during a dieta is this taking up from where different grieving cycles have gotten stuck. Maybe in certain parts of ourselves we're stuck in denial about some sort of loss or suffering that we've been through. Or we tend to bargain, or maybe we're just downright angry. The diets helped reveal to us where we're at in those different relational parts, and then start to unravel it and start to move us through to where a grieving should ultimately bring us, which is understanding how to be re-empowered, how to have our boundaries defended, and how to have our needs met, and how to as adults or as children, like we have a lot of things happen to us where we really can't do those things for ourselves, but as adults we can kind of go back and do that for the young self that lives inside, and thereby be able to have healthier relationships today and actually forgive people. Genuinely forgive people, not just kind of superficial,
Yeah, to not walk around with a giant suitcase of stuff that you're carrying with you.
Yeah.
Let some of that stuff go.
Yeah, I feel that at the kind of, in the general sense, that's what's happening on the healing side with diets, is unraveling those stuck, contorted, grieving cycles and helping us move to genuine re-empowerment and love, real forgiveness. But from there, knowing how to, have our space respected with kindness, and have ourselves feel nurtured and well in our lives. Yeah.
So before we wrap this thing up, I feel like an important 2 points to touch on, and they can be we can cover them at the same time. It's up to you, but it is, when we're talking about master plants and we're talking about dietas, cannabis and tobacco are seen as master plants, are known to be master plants, both with their own unique personalities. And I think, if we're talking to Westerners here, I think if you're doing an intro on plant dietas, people should know that these things are in that realm, and they, most people watching or listening have had a relationship with one or both of those things. And so you've had a relationship with a quote master plant, but not known it. And as I say to guys in my addiction work, is like, there is a whole dark side to tobacco and to cannabis that isn't understood in our culture,
modern culture,
because we don't even acknowledge that there is a light and a dark side to a thing,
or even that it's a person,
an object. Yeah, we just see it as an object.
Yeah, it's just a substance. Yeah, those two plants are very powerful plants, master plants, and both carry enormous darkness. Some plants tend to have more light within their world and less dark, and some have a lot of dark and less light. We work with tobacco a lot, like particularly mapacho, which is tobacco from the Amazon jungle. Curiously, though, we don't inhale it. Our lungs were meant to take in air, clean air. Inhaling any sort of anything else is damaging to the lungs. And if it's damaging to the lungs, it's damaging to the health. So we work with mapacho a lot, but we don't inhale. We just take the smoke into our mouth. Sometimes we might ingest it. That can be dangerous. And there are specialists who work with tobacco as a medicine, but it's pretty dangerous. It can be a bit challenging for the body, and particularly on the heart.
No doubt.
Yeah, but generally in apprenticeship diets, we probably include a little bit of mapacho for a more advanced person who knows how to respect the plant. Yeah, mapacho is a tool for us. We use it for protection predominantly, and it can also be used to clean energies that are really, really strong. We put our prayers into the mapacho before we smoke it, asking the spirit of tobacco to open its world to us and bring us its power of protection and help us stay in our light. And then we put that as like a shield around us. And that can help when doing ceremonial work where a lot of energies are coming off people. But I suppose most people kind of use tobacco or work with tobacco, inhaling it. And as soon as you're in that way of using it or working with it, it's kind of like there's not much else to say. It's already harmful to you. But certainly using it in the ceremonial way, we're still very careful. We say to people, don't just pick up your mapacho and smoke it because you're scared of energies, because if you're doing that without mindfulness, without prayerfulness, you're quite likely to just spread your fear everywhere, which is pretty dark. So, yeah, care and mindfulness, keeping things on the light side with mapacho. With marijuana, it's a really big topic. It's a really big plant. It's pretty present in the world. We don't work with it at all. We see its energy in people's bodies who have a strong addiction to it as being very dark and very destabilizing to the mind, and fostering of kind of energies of irritation and anger. I mean, it also fosters bacterial infections on the brain and has a kind of witchy energy to it, which, yeah, so theoretically it's a master plant and it has a medicine, and I have seen different accounts of it being used for medicinal purposes for certain complex brain dysfunction, if you like. But I mean, it's rare. I would say in 99% of cases when people are coming to us to retreats in the jungle who have a strong relationship with marijuana, the maestros work hard to clean that out of the system completely.
That makes sense. I mean, I have seen that myself in my work with people with addiction, in my own addiction to marijuana, when I was younger, in my teen years. And I have seen both sides of it in recent years, like 8 years ago. I engaged marijuana probably 10 times in different contexts, like float tank, just sitting in the bedroom with my partner, eye gazing, and like I had some actually very therapeutic moments and some beautiful breakthroughs, ego dissolution, but also was at that time opening up to plant medicine work, and just felt this kind of like unstable, wily energy about marijuana that didn't quite feel safe to me. And I just, anything that I put in my body, I want to make sure that it has a rightful place there in the long term, and that, it does feel safe.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't check all the boxes with it. And
Yeah, I used it for many years as well, but I see that the way I related with it was as a medication.
Exactly.
Yeah, it helped
Yep.
me feel like I could cope with all the stress in my life. And I think that's, that's okay to a point.
Mm-hmm.
We use different medications, different things to medicate ourselves in order to cope with our lives when they're so out of balance, when we're not really well in our lives. But then we hopefully reach a point where we realize, well, this isn't actually healing anything.
Yep.
This is just coping.
Yeah. And the way I've described this to people with marijuana and with tobacco is that, again, you're interfacing with a plant spirit. And so how are you coming to it? If you're coming to tobacco from this place of like, oh, I need this, I'm stressed, this is my habit, it's just what I do. You're coming to it from a addicted place. And a lot of people are that way with cannabis. Not everyone, obviously. There's plenty of intermittent users out there. But there's a lot of people who it's like, there's a routine, I need this to sleep, right? I think that's probably the most common one. Mm-hmm. People smoke an indica to fall asleep, and then they find they just can't sleep without it. Mm-hmm. Then it's this whole conundrum like, oh, I'm traveling, and so how can I get weed in the place that I'm traveling to? But there's this relationship with it where you're basically you're on the take. Mm-hmm. And any relationship where you have that with the person, that's a codependent relationship, and it's going to blow up on you.
Totally.
It's not going to serve you in the long term.
Yeah, and for me, and I know many other people have felt similar feelings in their relationship with marijuana. It's like she kind of says, I'll open your creative world to you. Yeah. I'll open your connection with nature. Yeah. It's seductive, right? It's like, hey, we're going to open everything. And yet somehow does the opposite. Clouds it all down and blocks everything and sends the mind into weird loops. Yeah, it's a kind of liar.
Yeah, I sort of felt that. This like, I don't fully trust you.
Yeah. And then, if you think about that, what's the history of it? It's been bred and crossbred for thousands of years to help people get a high. Mm-hmm. I kind of wonder how happy the spirit of the plant is about that.
Right. Yeah. If you're really taking this plant spirit thing seriously, like look at the genetic pathway of cannabis, of marijuana, and like where it's gone here, like into labs and into like hiding into the shadows of society for like decades. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah, and I've had that experience myself. You asked earlier about a couple of actual examples of dieta plants, my favorites. My absolute favorite would be morosa. Morosa is a very feminine plant spirit who's very patient and accommodating with our mistakes to a point. She can be very calm and receptive and kind of wrap you in this feeling of like self-sufficiency and self-love and self-inquiry. But if you disrespect her too far, if you push it too far, you eat things that she really doesn't want you to. She doesn't like chicken, I experienced. Things like that, or you expose yourself to energies that aren't good when the diet is needing a neutral space, she can be ferociously angry, and kind of punish you. In the ayahuasca ceremony is where you really see that. These experiences of the plant being mad with you can be pretty clear. And so it's not hard for me to imagine a plant as powerful as marijuana not being okay with how humanity relates with her.
Yeah, that makes plenty of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. The other favorite, I would say, well, maybe, I don't know if it's my second favorite, but it's up there, is the plant that you dieted, Pinon Blanco. It's an amazing plant, full of light, full of like clarity, stretching you in every way, stretching your digestion and purifying your digestion and it's like unraveling neurotic thinking and clarifying what's actually going on. It's a good one.
Yeah, my experiences with that diet were, I think, subtle in the daylight waking hours and a little less subtle when I was asleep, but gradually over time became quite strong when I was in ceremony. And I started having these experiences of just like like basically like being inside of a photocopier, like this like light just like wrapping around me, like back and forth. And I would sometimes see light like sort of shining in the windows, like, and I thought there was an alien spaceship outside, like doing laps and like ready to come inside. And then, but then it would take over, rather than seeing it in the room, it would sort of just like take over inside of me. And like, I would basically be wrapped up in an unfolding rainbow of light, for what felt like infinite amount of time, you know?
Interesting.
And yeah, it doesn't happen all the time, but usually in a 3-night weekend, it would happen once. And it was very, 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 very strong. Like couldn't move my body. And truly felt like I was visited by, not by God itself or himself, but like a spirit, an alien, something from not here,
higher cosmic
that
consciousness,
like came and just came, like either sucked me up or just came into me, and but felt like divine, loving, very pure, very clean.
Well, yeah, the clean is a good point. I was going to say that's usually the plant we prescribe to help deal with addiction. Addiction of pretty much any kind. It's a powerful purifier.
Interesting.
Purifies the blood, all the organs, the brain, the saliva. Everything is purified with that plant, and so it kind of purges all the substances, or even sometimes it's not substances. It can be work addiction or sexual addiction or other things. It kind of works its bright light. For me, it was brilliant light green energy into those places.
Exactly, green. 100%.
Cleans them out. Yeah.
This is what I saw too.
Yeah.
Just so much green.
Just such intense green.
Yeah. Well, it'd be very interesting to do a retreat that's focused on addiction, where everyone diets Pino Blanco.
Oh yeah.
Because there could be this like synergy in the room.
Yeah, we've done that before. The whole retreat is, well, maybe not entirely every person, because we always try to, we diagnose where the person's at, and then the precise plant that's good for them is prescribed. But we have had retreats where it just happened that 90% of the attendees were prescribed Pino Blanco at a time when one of our principal maestros, Arturo, was dieting it and had been for nearly 2 years.
Right.
The whole place was just an explosion of green. But now we do Pino Blanco purgatives as well. So vomitivo.
Yeah.
Which is, I haven't done that myself. I've done the albaca and Azucena, but I heard it's pretty tough. You drink a lot of an infusion of the Pino Blanco, and then you drink large quantities of tepid water, and then it all comes back up and cleans everything, blasts everything open.
Yeah, I recall doing that on the first, not the Pino Blanco purgative, but a purgative, on the first day after arriving in the jungle. And certainly had a meta moment there where I was like looking at my friend who I was with, being like,
we paid to come and do this.
Yeah, what are we fucking doing here, man? But yeah, I'll never forget that experience, and I can say that it was well worth the 18-hour flight that it took to get there.
Wow, that's a long one. It's not usually that long.
Yeah. I think I went LA, Lima, and then Iquitos.
Maybe all the like layover times.
Yeah, I definitely would stay somewhere overnight next time I go.
Yeah, I usually stay in Lima. Like I'll get down to Lima late at night, stay there one night at the airport hotel, and then Iquitos.
Yeah,
2 hours.
So, yeah, in my opinion, going all the way down there, worth it, and I will come again, and I look forward to coming down to Caya Shobo again. And if people want the real, authentic, deep work, the deep experience, and to go where these guys who are immersed in this work are, that's the place. And so I definitely recommend people go to Caya Shobo, and we'll put a link for that in the bio. And you guys have a beautiful website you've built in the last few years, and there's more and more video content on there.
Yeah, we're working on it. There's so much we'd like to share. You know, we're busy. It's a genuine community endeavor. You know, it's run as a nonprofit, and all of the facilitators are deeply immersed in the dieta process themselves and come and help support the retreats. And little by little, we're getting our sharing out there. We've been deliberately quiet. There seemed to be a lot of noise about ayahuasca, and we've deliberately kind of shied away from joining the fray, so to speak. But it feels like, you know, actually I heard the expression that the plant medicine space has been somewhat invaded by psychology. I in some ways I relate to that. In other ways, I think psychological reflection and support is very important to this work. But certainly I feel people are looking to understand something more about the more ancient history of these medicines, the mysticism, the wisdom and the beauty of it. And so it feels like it's time to bring our voice to the table, you know, and invite people there. And we'd love to have you again. And to welcome your people and support with whatever sort of healing they're looking for.
Yeah, folks listening to this, if you are interested in going to Peru, to Caya Shobo with me, send me an email. Send me a message, find me on social media, or send me a message through my website, and we'll see how much interest there is. And I'll build a list. And
you get to try that Pino Blanco purgative.
Yeah, we'll all do Pino Blanco together for a few weeks. And so, you know, if there's enough people who are interested and there's alignment there with the lot of us, we'll talk about doing a group trip down to the jungle. I would like that. I'm due for a check-in. So
sounds great.
I appreciate all the work that you do, Becky, and everything you've done for me. You've held a lot of space for me and for my wife, and witnessed and walked with us through a lot already. And yeah, somehow I still feel like this is the beginning of our relationship. And so that I think that speaks to the energy in you and in us together, and I like it. And I'm grateful for your presence in my life. I feel tremendously lucky to have found such a knowledgeable and trustable person who is in this lineage so far from its origin. To me, feels like just like some kind of divine destiny.
Wow, that's pretty big. Thank you so much, Ben. It's my pleasure to know you and to support you, and I enjoy your presence in my life just as much. Thank you.
All right, Becky. So I think we could have these conversations for a long time. Oh, your last name is Griffin. We didn't talk about this. I wanted to talk about this at the beginning of the show.
Okay.
What does Griffin mean?
Griffin is the mythical monster. It's the eagle-lion mix. And the griffin is the guardian of hidden treasures.
So fitting for the line of work that you have chosen to get into in your life. So thank you for being the guardian of hidden treasures.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
All right, everyone. We'll leave links in the show notes, all the relevant links for you to find your way to a good, safe place in the jungle if you're choosing to go that far and want to do work that's that deep. We'll make sure that you can get there. And until next time, bye. Thanks for watching another episode of the Evolving Man podcast. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below about what you got out of this episode. I really appreciate the engagement. And please share it with a friend. If this conversation was inspiring for you in some way, send it to somebody who might like it. All right.
My relationship program is the Conscious Relationship Council. It's for men, and you can check it out. I'll leave a link down below. If you're dealing with an addiction and you want to conquer it, the Freedom from Addiction Circle is something that I run. It's a private coaching group with me and a small group of men. You can reach out on a social media channel of your choice or through my website to find out more about that. All the best to you.